So I just finished watching Jirard the Completionist video, and it gave me a lot of talking points. So first off, I hope you do end up watching this, Jirard. I am a big fan of your channel, and I've watched you for a very long time. In fact, I've watched The Completionist since before I even started my YouTube channel. So yeah, I totally enjoy what you do, and I respect you. And I know people who know you and have vouched for how good of a person you are, and how you came through in your video is genuinely who you are. It's not like a fake act or persona like so many channels seem to be these days. So with that being said, I just wanted to kind of give my 2 cents on what you might be going through right now from my perspective. Now, I noticed towards the end of your video, you referenced how it was easier when you were smaller and almost enjoyed doing what you did better at that point. I don't know if that's because it was less pressure or because YouTube was different, but I guess what I wanted to get at with this video is what YouTube has become. You referenced in your video towards the beginning of it that around the beginning of this year, the algorithm on YouTube changed. And it made it a lot harder for your channel to get noticed in the algorithm. This is something that smaller channels, the vast majority of them, have been dealing with for the better part of the past 3.5+ years. YouTube itself, as it stands right now, is not sustainable. And unless something drastically changes, that's going to be the end of the platform for what it's become, the rise and fall of YouTube. It almost feels like this whole situation that's facing us in 2020 right now, it's all downhill from here for the platform. Now, I hope that's not the case, but it's certainly what it feels like. If advertisers start pulling out because they don't have the financial means to put into advertising on YouTube going forward because they have to allocate their funds elsewhere, that's going to have a ripple effect on the creators. And this video probably is going to come off as all over the place a little bit because there is a tremendous amount to cover with it. But it's also something that I've talked about in previous videos that I strongly recommend people checking out if they haven't seen them, on if it's okay to be a full-time YouTuber, especially this day and age. There are no guarantees with it. There's no promises. And I mean, full-time YouTubers already know that. I mean, it's kind of preaching to the choir, but it's something that I realized myself when I dove head on full-time doing videos daily, covering the news, regurgitating information, trying to do what the big guys were doing that was working for them, and it didn't work for me. So I kind of took a gigantic step back and reevaluated what the hell I was even doing on the platform in the first place. Now, when you talked about your persona situation, when you've played through it 4 times and you have to play through it 10 times and you're wondering if you need to play through it all 10 times to get the real ending because you're the completionist. Look, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, you need to take a step back and reevaluate it. And there's a certain point that we all come to with YouTube. Some of us face it a lot sooner than others, where we have to get to that point and reevaluate what we're doing, if we even enjoy it anymore. I think there's far too many YouTubers on the platform that are just kind of winging it now, and it was working for so long, and they were making decent money and having decent growth for so long that they've gotten to this point where they've ended up making videos but not actually happy with where they're at. They're just doing it to feed the algorithm. They're just doing it to make sure that they can make a buck to continue creating videos as their full-time job. That is something that is extremely scary and ultimately not very sustainable, in my humble opinion. If people are making videos just to please an audience, eventually that audience is going to get tired of it and move on from it. Now, not in every case, obviously. There's going to be exceptions to the rule, but by and large, a lot of this content, I've labeled it generic content on YouTube. It seems to be coming to a head And your video kind of exacerbated that point where you're worried about your content. You sounded like you might not even be enjoying it as much as you used to because of a whole number of things that are happening right now. And that in itself is a very concerning situation, because if you are doing YouTube videos and your heart and soul is not in it, then what are you doing them for? As you referenced, the money was just not worth it, which I can attest to. Even as a smaller YouTuber, I definitely got a good amount of views and I made okay money for someone my size, but certainly not sustainable, and certainly not for the work that I was putting into the videos, the money that was worth getting out of it. It wasn't there. I started the channel with the desire of sharing my passion of gaming. I had no intention of making it a business. I had no intention initially of even making money off of it. It was just, I got laid off from my job at Qualcomm. I got some time right now. I'm going to start making some videos on video games. Maybe meet some people in the community, make some friends, chat about games and what we love about them and what makes them special, and share my experiences in the community. And as it started going on and I was putting more time into it and I realized I could make money out of it, I started, I don't want to say getting fake, but just not being who I was. And that point was where I started going wrong. I started chasing the views. I started trying too hard. I started trying to be someone that I'm not. And in doing so, I completely lost who I was in the process. And it took taking a step back, getting a new job, fortunately, in a cybersecurity company, to be able to reevaluate where I was at, what I was doing, and why I was doing it, to realize that, yes, I still do have a passion for YouTube, and I can actually do what I always wanted to do and not worry about the money. Now, you having over 1 million subscribers and 19 people working at The Completionist, it's a little bit different, and that exacerbates the situation quite a bit. I mean, exponential stress when you're dealing with paying people, paying salaries, making sure that their families aren't suffering because of an algorithm that you can't control. I couldn't imagine the stress that you'd be dealing with under all of that. But my point being is, it sounds like you've come to the point where you're frustrated with YouTube because you've poured so much into it, but the money just isn't there to sustain it. It brings me back to the original point of, should people be full-time YouTubers? Ideally, yes, but realistically, it's just not there. It's not feasible. And that might be attributed to too many hands in the pot, too many people trying to do it. And I know, ironically, the immortal John Hancock referenced too many YouTubers, which I vehemently disagreed with a few years ago and thought his standpoint was completely off base. And I still do feel that way. Are there too many YouTubers? No, just the business model isn't sustainable. Everybody should be able to broadcast themselves. Everybody has the right to do it. Some may be better than others. Actually, a lot are better. Some are terrible. I mean, it's kind of the roll of the dice with the people that are making the video. There's really no guarantee of success. And unfortunately, the way YouTube has played out, there was a rise and fall to it. And I think your video is showing that we're starting to feel the downfall of YouTube. Like, this may be that moment. And I think a lot of YouTubers out there are starting to talk about that, at least behind the scenes. I haven't seen too many videos like yours, but I've heard a lot of conversations. I've seen a lot of tweets about it, and the conversation is definitely happening. And for the longest time, people have been asking for an alternative platform. They've wanted to go somewhere else where YouTube didn't screw them over and YouTube didn't make these crazy rules and be so aggressive against people, things like that, where ultimately having another platform wouldn't necessarily fix the issues, because there's only so many eyeballs to go around. There's only so many people that can watch these videos, and there's only so much advertisement money to go out there. And these platforms that are going to be allowing the advertisements are going to be taking a percentage of it. And then you got the government taking taxes off the revenue that the creators make. And ultimately, at the end of the day, most people are not going to be making very much money. So it should just be a passion project, especially when it comes to video games, because this whole market is completely, it's on quicksand. It's sinking fast. And I do not believe deep down in my heart that it is a sustainable business model for the long run. People should be tuning in for you. And if YouTube, as you talked about in your video, isn't showing your stuff, if it's not promoting you anymore and you're unable to make the money that you once were, even though you have a ton of subscribers and relative to me, a lot of views, you also have basically a company that works for you and you have to pay them. So it's a very delicate balance. It's a challenging situation. I empathize 1,000% with you. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you got to go back to, why are you doing this in the first place? And is it something sustainable? And as a business, if it's not sustainable, you need to find something that is. And maybe that still includes doing YouTube with it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're not having fun with this and you're not making the money to make ends meet, and there's other situations that's stressing you out with it, take a step back and reevaluate it. Make sure that everything lines up with what you want out of this. At least those are my thoughts on it. I really appreciate your video. It really resonated with me, and I wish you the best. I hope it works out for you. It seems like no matter what YouTube does, it just doesn't work, because there's just too many people putting their hands in the pot. And that creates a situation that is extremely challenging for larger creators to overcome. But we'll see. This video was not sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, by the way.